Okay, now we're going to turn our attention to how do you collect data on your coaching or consulting project, because it's going to be very much rooted in being fact-based, not on your best guess. So we want to be able to use the data to bolster your mutual problem-solving, decision-making outcomes. Now, cautionary note here, if you remember, we emphasize the importance of emotion in making decisions, but we don't want to give short shrift to the importance of being data-driven and fact-based when and where appropriate. So let's look at some of the ways that we can collect data and discuss what some of the shortcomings as well as benefits of each of the different approaches will be. So let's begin with the quantitative way of data acquisition. And this simply means we do counting of occurrences. For instance, we might want to time how long it takes for a product to go from raw material to the actual finished goods. We might want to look at the accuracy or error rate. How many of the products are left unsold because there was some mistake, whether it's a supplier didn't provide us with exactly the right resources that we require to build our product, or if it's our own labor issue where we're making mistakes. All kinds of ways of measuring the time it takes for something to occur, the error or accuracy percentage of total products undertaken. You might want to measure the cost either of a sub-component or sub-process or the entire project or both, and see how that's trending. Additionally, maybe you'd want to measure certain incidents as it relates to safety maybe. How many times do you cut yourself if you're using a saw, or hit your finger if you're hammering nails? Anything that can be measured through counting, a quantitative analysis, would be data that you'd want to be able to collect as part of the project with your prospect, client, customer. And obviously, depending on the project, some of your engagements will lend themselves to pretty clear-cut kinds of quantitative analysis. And you'll know best, based on your area of expertise, what can truly be counted and what are things that perhaps are beyond the ability to count. So let me provide you with this challenge. Within quantitative analysis, what would a coach or a consultant face that might be a detraction in using quantitative analysis? And what do you see as the benefits of using quantitative analysis? Share your thoughts in the chat function that is part of our platform. And just identify that you're responding to the quantitative data analysis and you have the following thoughts, and then we can review them together and make sure that you have a good grasp on the pros and cons of quantitative analysis. Now let's look at qualitative analysis. This is a little more difficult to measure because it doesn't lend itself as easily, as readily to the counting that the quantitative analysis does. So what do we mean when we say qualitative data collection? Well, for instance, you might conduct interviews, either same person over time or different people all addressing a particular situation or scenario. So you might have interviews but how do I mix and match and understand where there are the similarities or differences in the data collected when it's someone speaking in a more unrestricted form? You might have a questionnaire that you send out. And of course, there are different kinds of questionnaires. Some are the open ended, where you ask people to write a narrative, some kind of paragraph in response to a question or a prompt. Or you could have a questionnaire that simply has them circle from a choice of 3 or 4 prompts that you have provided. So you have interviews, you have questionnaires. You could look at archival data. That would mean, in a business setting, job descriptions, career progression, how many promotions did the person receive? Maybe it's their performance feedback on their yearly reviews, what has been noted. So you could look at archival data that are stored. In a family example, maybe it's things like the children's report card to see what, if anything, can be extracted from the data contained within multiple years of report cards. So different things like that could also be used in a more personal, as opposed to the business or professional client engagement. And there's always observation. Your best skills are often your eyes, your ears, in some instances, your hands, if you touch the product to determine or discern whether it has errors that are in the production of it. So your observational skills could also be qualitative. Here again, I will ask that you please respond through the chat in our platform and tell me what you see as the pros and cons of qualitative analysis. And we can go back and forth and discuss some of the best practices and some of the things that are to be avoided when it comes to qualitative and quantitative data analysis. But I'd like to introduce a couple of tools to you now, so I'll return to my screen so that you can see two things that I want to share with you. First being theme analysis for qualitative content, and the other being force field analysis for qualitative analysis. So let's go first to our theme analysis. And I gave you an example here just so you can see how you could code the text box or the recorded interview if you were to ask a question and have somebody respond in a more free-form, free-flowing fashion. So here we color code the specific themes that come out of a response. So the purples are times when someone expressed a level of uncertainty. The light green is when they expressed some kind of alignment or agreement with the topic. In this particular example that we're using here, it refers to climate change. The light purple color refers to this individual's belief in experts to provide real or truth kinds of assessments or analysis. And then the tannish yellow color is just the changing of terminology so that we can track if they really mean the same thing when they use different words. And I give you the source that I used for this so that you too can collect further insight into how to code themed data. Now let's turn our attention to a force field analysis. And here you see the long rectangular box in the middle is our proposed change, and we have gray arrows to the left that are forces for change, those things that are pushing us towards change, galvanizing our energies and efforts. And there's an equal number in our example here of forces that are resisting change, dragging heels, preventing us from moving forward. So let's see how this would actually play out. Our proposed change is to sell a new product. Well, one of the reasons why we are considering this is because competitors have introduced a similar product to the one that we're anticipating releasing to the marketplace. So we want to remain in competition and exceed what our competitors are doing. We don't want to leave the market to them and not compete. As it happens, our supplier for our existing product is going out of business. So we need to look for another product because we cannot continue to sell the existing one beyond what the supplier is able to provide us by way of raw goods or raw materials. And as a business, we seek a higher margin, and this new product would be one where we would be able to acquire a higher margin than our existing product, which we won't be able to sell too much longer anyway, given that our key supplier is going out of business. And this would open up a new market opportunity. So yes, obviously this is structured in a way where I created the situation, the proposed change, and the forces for change. But you could do this as well for your business as to what would be motivating the change that a prospect would seek. And then we'll also turn our attention to what would be resisting the change. Well, you're going to get potentially pushback. We have no time to do this. We're so busy as it is. How are we going to devote the time to build and market this new product? Besides, we don't have any expertise in this new market, nor in how to best sell this new product. And if we were to try, training is very expensive. We'd have to take people out of their current job to either put them into a classroom or devote too much time to online training, and then we run the risk that people won't learn what we expect them to learn. So we'll have to do remedial training, and it gets time consuming, expensive, and we're not even certain that we have the expertise to pull this off anyway. And then on top of that, this new product is going to require new machinery, and that also adds cost. And now we've got to develop new relationships. We have to vet the new supplier. This is a hard thing to pull off. Well, depending on which side, the gray or the blue, is stronger will determine if, in fact, we can create this proposed change and sell the new product. This is referred to as a force field analysis because we have multiple forces, some on the pro decision, some on the negative or con for the decision. And it's that tension between the two that will determine whether this proposed change will take place. You, as the coach or consultant, would be very well served for you to determine what the likely pros and cons are for your force field analysis and come up with an appropriate response that heightens the importance of the pro decision making and reduces, or at least responds, to how to avoid the greater impact of the negative or con force fields that are at play to either prevent this decision from going forward, or perhaps slowing it down and reducing the ultimate effectiveness of this particular proposed change. So I'll ask you now, download the force field analysis that's on the platform and create your own pros and cons cons for a very likely proposed change that you would be involved with. Send it in and we can review it to make sure that we have correctly addressed what the pros, cons are, and how we are best suited to respond to those things that might slow us down and increase the value or benefit of the things that might help us create that change. Look forward to seeing your responses, and we'll see each other in the next module.